Hello there, my fellow history enthusiast, and welcome to this week's episode of Rolling Through History! Today, we're discussing the various types of government we see in the world and what exactly it is that differentiates them amongst the others. So I sure hope you brought your comfy running shoes with you today because it's learning time! To get the ball rolling here, let's first define what it is exactly a government is. You see, government, as defined by the legal department at Cornell, defines a government as being the means and system in which a state or population rules itself and controls its means of existence. In other words, it's the rules put in place in order for a government to, function. Now, most teachers, college professors, and political thinkers alike categorize all the different governments of the world into one of three main categories in order for us to best understand them. That is, democracies, authoritarian, and oligarchies. Alright, so right off the bat, let's start with democracy. Now, democracy is a cool umbrella term to mean governed by the people. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what the heck does that even mean? Well, sit down and be quiet because I'm going to tell you. So, within the wide field that constitutes democracy, you have two main types of said democracy. Type 1 is direct democracy, which is when the state gives the vote directly to the people. Now, it's important to note here that direct democracy is not really effective within a large population. Way too many opinions exist to simply have a yay or nay vote. However, as we'll learn about later, direct democracy often plays roles in other forms of government. States that do practice a form of direct democracy are often small, hunter-gatherer style tribes in places like South America or Africa. For instance, a chief might declare the river, where the tribe gets most of its food from, to be low for the season, so a democratic vote to either move or not will be had. Then there is type 2 democracies, or indirect democracy. Now, this is often the category most nations see themselves who practice democratic principles. In indirect democracy, the citizens vote indirectly for their government by electing representatives to run the government for them. America, as an example, falls under the indirect type. As a constitutional republic, the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It describes what exactly the government can and cannot do. In case you haven't noticed, we don't even vote on every little thing going on in America. Instead, we vote for representatives to do, just that. That is, they enact laws, they fight laws, and choose people to run regulated government agencies based on their best judgment. Another example of an indirect democracy would be those in the United Kingdom. The UK is ran by a parliamentary monarchy. Basically, the people of the colony vote for their preferred representative, and then that representative joins the parliament to rule. Most common forms of authoritarian governments fall under the term monarchy. In a monarchy, rule is passed down based on hereditary, which means the king's son is going to be his successor. Now, a monarchy is when the entire power of the government is held by a single monarch, aka a king or queen. However, one person cannot rule a large populace by themselves, so they place whoever into government positions as they do see fit. Basically, sole authority within an authoritarian government lies with the elected leader. Countries that do practice authoritarian governments are places such as Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, and even Nazi Germany, what fell under authoritarian. Now, just as democracy shared multiple variations, so too does authoritarian. Take North Korea, for example. They're actually what's called a dictatorship. A dictatorship is an authoritarian who rules by military force. Kim Jong-un does not answer to anyone. However, he has complete domination over everyone, and he gained his role based on who his dad and his grandfather were. Sound familiar? Another form of authoritarian government is known as totalitarian. Just like in a dictatorship, where one man held the supreme power, totalitarian differentiates by giving total power to a political party. In Saddam Hussein's Iraq, he held ultimate authority. However, he deemed ultimate authority over everything to his party, the Ba'aths, as they controlled manufacturing, production, heck, even the sanitation department. A lot like Nazi Germany, Hitler was the head of the Nazi party, and the guy who was the face of everything, sure, but the party controlled everything. Alright, so the final category in this video is known as an oligarchy. In an oligarchy, power is held by a small group of people, most often the biggest producers within the society. Take China, for example. Yes, they have a president, but all the power for the economic output is controlled by the biggest businesses in the state. The entire means of production is controlled by the top elites. And governmental policies, in turn, reflect their manufacturing desires. Just like Soviet Russia. Sure, they had their party figures, but those figures, well, often they were highly influenced by these select few manufacturing elites. Now, just like the other two categories, oligarchy, as well, has its variations. Have you ever heard of a theocracy, where the government is controlled by the religious authorities? Well, that falls under an oligarchy. Take Iran, for example. They have a leader, sure, but his entire party and cabinet, well, they're heavily influenced by the religious elites. The same as places like Myanmar. Government is heavily influenced by the Buddhist lobby there.